Welcome to the Union Federation podcast, where we discuss both Star Trek and the Orville here on the Fandom Podcast Network. On this show, we take an in-depth look at each of these franchises and discover that both of them can coexist in today's fandom as they introduce us to fresh, new, and exciting stories, characters, galactic destinations, and mirror universes. So, I got a great crew with me to do the ship, to handle the ship this week. Of course, I'm Kyle, sitting in the captain's chair for you during Star Trek Discovery. And you know what? It is a little sad around here. Our weapons expert, Hayley Stoddard, was on special assignment last week, but she got a little bit of Romulan crud and is in med bay this week. So get well soon, Hayley. But you know what? I've still got a very worthwhile crew here. Very excited that she was getting to handle the weapons console again this week. I think she might actually do something with the quantum torpedoes. Amy Nelson is back on the Union Federation. How are you doing, Amy?
Very good. Watch out, listeners. Pew, pew, pew. I might be finger happy. Trigger happy.
and in a reversing, you normally, when you're in the mirror universe, you come out with facial hair. Even though he does, in the picture you'll probably see later, have facial hair. In his mirror universe version, he's clean shaven, and that's Mr. Kevin Reitzel.
This is true, and can I be the controller of one of those? What do you call the tormenting rooms? The
agonizer, yeah.
Can I touch those buttons when someoe's in there? Can I be that guy?
Only if you put the year 2020 in the agonizer.
Yes.
Of course. We might all be in an agonizer for 2020.
Have I got some words for 2020 in the agonizer? How does that feel, mister? Does that hurt? Oh, that was just cuz.
Yeah. Just remember when David Cronenberg taps on your shoulder, Kevin, you might be need to be a little worried.
Yeah, definitely, but I'm going to like it.
Yeah. Well, this is Union Federation episode 84 here on the Fandom Podcast Network. And yes, we will be covering everything that is Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 9 already. Terra Firma Part 1. We've only got, 4 episodes left, guys?
No!
As time flies when you're having fun. So, well, without further ado, though, before we even get started in this episode, let's open some hailing frequencies and tell people not only they can find the Union Federation, but all the great shows under the umbrella that is the Fandom Podcast Network. And Mr. Reitzel, would you be so kind?
Of course. All right, first of all, you got to find us on YouTube. Let's start there. We have our brand new YouTube channel for the Fandom Podcast Network, and we have some exclusive programming for that as well. And just want to tease, for those of you that are excited, that Christmas, of course, is right around the corner, and we will be doing a Scrooged live YouTube Couch Potato Theater on Friday, December 18th. And that, of course, will be on YouTube, so you can watch it later if you don't watch it live. So make sure you check out the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube, and please subscribe. We would love the support there. Also, all of our audio podcasts will also be put up on the YouTube channel, but you can also stream our audio podcast on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. You can also stream the Fandom Podcast Network on the Podbean app. The Fandom Podcast Network is on all major podcast platforms, which of course includes Apple Podcast and iTunes. Please join us over on the Union Federation Podcast Facebook page, where we post a lot of fun Star Trek and Orville news and such over there. Make sure you join that page. You can find us there as well. Also, you can find Union Federation on Twitter and Instagram. And, of course, you can find the main Fandom Podcast Network Facebook page up there as well. If you'd like to contact us directly, you can email us at unionfederation@gmail.com. My name is Kevin. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix. Kyle, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW or on Instagram, AKyleFandom.
And, of course, Amy, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson. You can find me over on Galaxy Class, talking Star Trek Next Generation. And we just did a Batleth battle where we talked about Frame of Mind and Man of the People, both season 6 episodes. So that was really fun discussion. And you can also find me on All Good Things, where we are going to be discussing recurring holodeck characters.
Oh.
Yeah, sort of talking about all of them together. So it'll be fun.
Hey, Kevin. Amy just had a Batlift battle. She's here, so it must have not gone well for her co-host.
What's funny is I love the fact that you call it Batlift battle. I had pulled out an old Batlift. It was like a fan-made replica of an early version of the Batlift. I think it was made out of aluminum that I bought at one of those early 90s Star Trek creation Pasadena events.
Wow.
And I had it in with a bunch of posters and stuff, and I actually just displayed that in my den just yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, wow. And it looks really cool. I'll have it hanging up here in the studio just so you guys can see it one day, but I was just like, it just looks so cool.
It does. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Make sure you check out Miss Amy Nelson on those podcasts. Also, of course, you can catch Hayley on Twitter. She is at Trekkie01D. And there's two ways you can support the Fandom Podcast Network and the Union Federation Podcast. First of all, please visit our TeePublic store. Fandom Podcast Network and Union Federation Podcast have some cool logos up there, and when you purchase something with our logos on them, it helps us out here. So search Union Federation Podcast or Fandom Podcast Network. And of course, please leave us reviews. Please support the Fandom Podcast Network and Union Fed with reviews on your podcast platforms, of course, including Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Please search Fandom Podcast Network to leave those reviews for Union Federation. And we love 5 stars, of course, but we love rated reviews and any feedback in general. Back to you, Captain Kyle.
Well, you know what, guys? We got to trip through a mirror universe. Do we trust a guy named Carl? And we have Captain Killy. So I think without further ado, it's time to once again head into the Officer's Lounge. So we are talking tonight, of course, Discovery Episode 9, Terra Firma Part 1, our first true two-part episode of this season. Usually Discovery is always good for one of those, and it's kind of a Star Trek tradition, guys. Every season at least has one two-part episode in it, it seems like. Verify, I'm not mistaken with this, right?
No, I think you're right. I mean, we've had a 2-parter, we've had a Part 2, and we've had a Part 3. So we're just getting all the different parts together.
I think that TNG, Next Generation, really kind of solidified that quite well. Because they did a great job with wrapping up a season finale with a season premiere 2-parter. But then you would get that kind of middle of the season 2-parter sometimes, you know?
Yeah. I think that was around back in the day where the Christmas break, so you'd have maybe a cliffhanger around November, December, and then you'd pick it back up in January to finish the season.
I think for Next Gen, I think maybe Gambit Part 1 and 2 was the middle of the season ones. I can't remember if there was another 2-parter within that.
Yeah, the one where Spock returns. We just talked about.
That's right.
Yeah, Unification.
Yeah, Unification is a middle of the road one, and
yeah. Good times.
Well, let's focus on Part 1 of Terra Firma. In the USS Discovery sickbay, Dr. Hugh Culber and Kovich, David Cronenberg, making his return to Star Trek Discovery, observe a holographic scan of Felipe Giorgio. Very cool effect, by the way. I just got to throw that out there.
Creepy.
Kovich tells yeah, pretty. Kovich tells Culber that he is familiar with Giorgio's condition and calls up an image of Lieutenant Commander Yor, a deceased time soldier from the Temporal War. We need more information.
By the way, did you notice the season 1/2 Next Gen pinstripe uniform on that?
Yes, I did. It made me squeal.
Yes, it did. Me too. You know, it's funny. I just to interrupt real quick. I was never a fan of those for a while after the newer ones came out, but now as it's kind of aged, I'm kind of digging those now.
Yep.
Sorry.
So Kovich explains that time travel can cause sickness because molecules are meant to exist in the time in which they are created. Culber notes that Discovery's entire crew travel through time, but Kovich explains that Giorgio is additionally from the Terran parallel universe. You travel from 2379 and via the alternate reality created by a temporal incursion of a Romulan mining ship. Not good. Until Giorgio, Yor was the only person known to have traveled across both time and dimension, Kovich said. With his molecules straining both to return to their time and the alternate universe, Yor was in enough pain for his doctors to petition the Federation for euthanasia. He cannot be sent back to his universe without breaking the interdimensional displacement restriction, an ironclad part of the temporal accords, Kovich says. Because Giorgio traveled across such a great period of time, and because the prime and mirror universes have been drifting apart, her condition will be much worse. Kovich warns Kolber that not to tell Giorgio she is dying, as Terrans would seek a way to die in battle. He recommends instead sedating her and putting her in the brig. Undeterred, Kolber has the computer analyze data from the past and present, and to Kovich's surprise, the computer declares it has found a solution. In the mess hall, as Kayla Detmer, Joanna Wasakun, Jen Rise, and R.A. Bryce and Nilsson observe, Georgie is able to lift a glass of wine as her hand keeps phasing through the stemware. First Officer Sylvia Tilly approaches awkwardly, and Giorgio quickly begins insulting her and notes starkly that if Tilly gets everyone on board killed, perhaps she will be called Killy after all, a reference to the mere Sylvia Tilly's nickname. With Commander Michael Burnham observing from afar, Tilly offers to help Giorgio, who rebuffs her and spills food on Tilly's uniform. Burnham approaches and says Colbert has made a development. The frustrated Giorgio says it won't matter and tells Tilly to simply use a phaser and put her down like a dog. In Saru's ready room, Kolber explains that the spear data indicates that a cure for Giorgio's condition can be found on Danis 5, an uninhibited planet just shy of the Gamma Quadrant near the galactic rim. Kovich questions whether the computer, which has merged with the AI spear data, can be trusted, but Kolber says he believes it is trying to help Giorgio, though he notes the computer still places the probability of Giorgio surviving at 5%. Guys, so much to absorb in this opening gambit. First of all, temporal wars, ironclad contracts. I'm just like, I need a show just for, I need like a couple episodes just for this, because that's a lot, and my molecules hurt just thinking about what Giorgio's probably going through. Amy, you're shaking your head. I think you got, yeah. Yeah, lots of brain hurt.
There's, a couple of things. When I was, watching Giorgio and her phasing in and out, and then learning that, your molecules are meant to exist in that phase, that portion of the universe. And my brain just instantly went to TNG, for example, Time Squared, where Captain Picard was, 6 minutes ahead or behind, or the next phase with Ro Laren and Geordi, or Parallels, where Worf is going through and he had to find his universe.
And he had all those different awards.
Yes.
Batliff awards.
And so all of that was going through my mind. And it's like, yes, you need to be in the right universe. And so to me, it made sense. And then my logical brain, I listened to, actually, Hayley knows someone named Zach. And he does a podcast called Metatrex, and talking about all this meta and philosophy. But he was talking about, and this is a long time ago, but that our bodies regenerate. So really, are we who we are? Because every 7 years, all of our molecules regenerate, right? So then we're a new person. So given that, wouldn't her molecules be reproducing and recreating in this time? Therefore, she would eventually come over. That was something that went through my mind. I'm like, okay, don't think too much about it, Nelson. Just let it go. So I'm going along for the ride, but I think she definitely needs to get back to her time period. The only other weird thing was like the temporal accords and that it's ironclad. Nothing in the Federation is ironclad. I mean, look at the Prime Directive. That's supposed to be ironclad, but how many captains have broken a Prime Directive? All of them are going to raise their hand. So I find it interesting that this is one thing that we can't do. I'm going to laugh when they break the temporal accords.
So what was that? Every 7 years, our cells, blah, 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 change or something?
Yeah, so your cells recreate and regenerate
So what you're saying is, in Star Trek terms, that humans here in current day go through their own kind of Ponfar thingy?
Yes.
Do we get a heads up when that happens? I mean, I want a heads up on when that happens. How far am I into my cycle right now?
Oh my goodness. Well, multiples of 7. There you go.
That kind of blew me away. What's funny is when all that techie tech was going on there, that I was buying that excuse about not being able to be in this time and stuff, and that made sense to me.
Yeah.
What doesn't make sense to me, though, is the ironclad temporal accords that you just referred to, Amy Nelson. What makes them ironclad? The only thing that can make them ironclad is someone with the power in temporal distortion and time travel to make changes to that or threaten to make changes to that, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so Tilly is a brand new first officer, right? This comes with certain responsibilities. It comes with certain, changes in maybe your normal everyday routines. Does it also include responding in maybe a different way of having some food thrown on you? I have a feeling when that happened with Giorgio, I was going, okay, is she just going to be Tilly as we're used to, or is she going to step it up a little bit and push and flex a little first officer muscle? She didn't do that, and I was a little disappointed in that. I know she was being kind of understanding, and she feels, bad for Giorgio, and so she's trying to, but she did that in front of everybody.
But what would you have had her do? Because it's Giorgio. We know she's going through crap, so you have to give her a little leeway there. And is that a battle that she's willing to fight at this moment?
What I would have done, what I've written for Tilly's character at that time, was for her to stand up and kill Giorgio with kindness, like a first officer in a situation like that, instead of just taking it as Tilly would have taken it before she was first officer. Just standing up and doing something, not to say you're never going to do that again, or don't ever, not in a threatening way. That's the only thing that I would have done. That scene bothered me a little bit. That just saying, Kyle.
But I think there's a point to that, and I think it's this for Tilly. Even though she's growing and with this first officer, Giorgio is still a very intimidating factor for her. And I think that's it's showing that I think if you go too fast with Tilly in this aspect, it seems unnatural. I think the fact it was Giorgio who did it makes a little more sense for Tilly to have that kind of response, because I think Tilly is very intimidated by Giorgio still. I think she's growing, but I still think it's
the thing that Tilly kind of redeemed it a little bit when she went up and hugged Giorgio later on, and Giorgio wasn't expecting it. But in front of a crew in a mess hall, being a first officer, I just wish they would have written that a little bit differently.
I could see that, yeah.
One of the things too that I didn't talk about and we didn't hit in this thing too, I found it very interesting the fact that Saru really wasn't ready to go off on this mission to help Giorgio, but it was Admiral Vance who pushed for it to be done, giving Saru advice that if you lose one of your crew members, your crew's going to see you different as captain.
I am loving Admiral Vance. I've said it since we met him.
Is it just me, or is this guy too handsome? I'm just saying.
My gosh, he needs to stay. For sure. And exactly, Kyle, his advice to Saru, and he was becoming vulnerable. He's like, I never listened to advice, and that was my fault. So I'm giving it to you in hopes that you will listen. And his advice was spot on. Absolutely. Like, this is a very bad road to go down if you're a captain, because your crew is going to look at you differently and you will look at yourself differently.
Kevin, I have a feeling Amy, after this podcast, might go and rewatch The Mummy again.
I love that actor. Oded.
Yes.
Sure. That guy's awesome. But one last thing about this first part that I was kind of like going, the explanation to where to take Giorgio to this Danis 4, an uninhibited planet, quotation marks I'm doing right now, just shy of the Gamma Quadrant near the galactic rim. Kovas questions whether the computer, which is merged with the blah, 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 I was like, what?
Yeah, that brings up one other quick point before we move on to the next part. Something I hope that they start exploring in these later few episodes this season and going into next, because I think it's very obvious now that we're in this time, unless something real drastic happens in Mirror Universe, we're in this timeline for a while with Discovery. I want more of the Conspire AI Discovery computer. I want some episodes dedicated to them working with that computer, because it feels like a character on its own. And I was a big fan of the Calypso short trek anyway. So I would like to see more of that.
Have they kind of written that out or just kind of sitting on it, you think?
They're sitting on it.
They're sitting on it.
Yep. Right, we're going to get there, I'm sure.
Yeah. So let's dive into Act 1. Discovery uses its spore drive to jump to Danis 5. Giorgio and Burnham prepare to beam down while Giorgio arming herself, Saru and Tilly approach to see them off. Saru, noting he and Giorgio have never minced their words, says they may not meet again and tells her he has learned as much from her as from his prime Philippia Giorgio. Giorgio tells Tilly the crew may survive her tenure as acting first officer after all, and Tilly responds that she has been good for her weirdly. She eschews Giorgio's preferred handshake in favor of a hug that leaves the Terran slightly flustered. Great face acting by Michelle Yeoh in this moment too. Just how you could tell she was like, I'm really uncomfortable with this, but there's part of me that kind of likes it. Just in how she carried her face.
The comment with Tilly saying that you've been good for me, weirdly, with the pause and then weirdly, that was good too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Giorgio and Burnham beam to the planet, finding themselves on a snowy, desolate planet. Giorgio remarks darkly that it is the perfect place to die, and they begin walking to the coordinates indicated by the spear data. In engineering, Adira Tal struggles to retrieve the details of the distress call detected from the Vernon Nebula. Lieutenant Commander Paul Stamets notes that they forgot to reinitiate the algorithm when they input a new storage array. He restarts it and resumes working. Adira is upset that they wasted time on such a mistake, but Stamets notes that they are tired and angry with Gray Tal, whose manifestation has ceased visiting them, though Adira denies they are angry or miss Gray. As they travel across Danis 5's icy plains, Burnham asks why Giorgio chose to adopt the Terran Burnham from the rubbish heap. The other children ran to her with hands outstretched, Giorgio says, but the mere Burnham stayed on the heap, prepared to be her own salvation. Giorgio continues to antagonize Burnham, who theorizes that she is lashing out over regret at having killed the Terran Burnham. They arrive at the coordinates and are surprised to find what appears to be a human man smoking a cigar and reading a newspaper next to a door to nowhere. He reveals the headline of the newspaper, Emperor Giorgio dies horribly painful death. The man says his name is Carl, but otherwise offers only vague responses, tautologies, or puns. The cure to Giorgio's ills could be through the door, Carl says, but Burnham scans find nothing unusual and are barely able to register it. Burnham demands Carl help Giorgio when she has another episode, but he responds that she is antagonizing him because of her anger at Giorgio, surprising Burnham. Sitting down, Carl notes that she should read the newspaper as it has all the answers in black and white. Giorgio says it reports her death, but that she is still alive. But Carl, dangling his pocket watch, responds that is the next day's edition. Back aboard Discovery, Saru, Tilly, and Stamets and Nadira watch a holographic recording of the distress call. It comes from the Kelpian Dr. Issa of the KSF Keith. Help me out here, guys. Keith? Yep, I'm going with Keith.
Yeah, go for it.
Issa explains that her stranded vessel was contacted 6 months ago prior to Captain Robert Weems of the USS Hiragawa Genai, which has been 2 weeks away from rescuing them but never arrived. When Issa speculates could be because the ship could have been destroyed trying to penetrate the nebula, Tilly notes Issa had some red discoloration on her face from radiation burns. It is urgent that Verbuin, Issa says as the message cuts off. Adira and Stamets cannot reconstruct the rest. Stamets explains the message is over a century old and must predate the burn, but Saru is distracted by the fact that the crew is Kelpian. Tilly explains historical records show the ship was investigating a dilithium nursery in the nebula. Saru knows the ship must still be intact, and Stamets offers to use its prefix code to access onboard sensors via a back door. Tilly offers to debrief Vance, but Saru tells her to wait until they have more substantive news to report. On the planet, Carl continues to offer frustrating answers to Burnham's questions about what happens if Giorgio walks through the door. Giorgio determines to go through the door, and Carl warns that while her condition will not worsen, there are other ways to die. Burnham tries to say something, but Giorgio tells her no one to shut the hell up. As Carl and Burnham watch, Giorgio opens the wooden door and walks through. She finds herself stepping off a shuttle in the ISS Discovery shuttle bay. Her hair is transformed, and she is once again dressed as the Terran Emperor. She is greeted by Captain Sylvia Tilly, Joanne Owasakun, the head of her honor guard, and other crew who salute and shout, "Terra Firma!"
That's
guys, first of all...
Killy, by the way.
Yeah, that's Killy. Well, yes. First of all, guys... Burnham getting put in her place again in this episode, not only by Giorgio, but by Carl as well. Couple of interesting things here. Obviously, we've got the whole angle with what's going on with Giorgio and Burnham on the planet with Carl and the mysteries there. But I find what's happening on Discovery very interesting as Saru, who's Mr. By the Book, as soon as he sees a Kelpian, it's like, all out the window. Don't tell Vance anything. You know, what's going on here? And I got to be honest with you two guys, just also, I'm not sure where they're going with this Adira Tall thing at this point. It started off interesting, and now it's just become this really bad, not say bad, but quiet background story. But I want to get what your guys' thoughts were. Kevin, I'm going to give you the first crack at this act.
I'm still not satisfied with why they're at this planet, how it's a doorway to the Terran Empire, not guarded, but, well, sort of guarded by this Carl guy who's, straight out of a 1950s, 60s, movie or sitcom. I don't know. I'm still like, unless there's something I missed or there's something that's coming up, there's just sometimes Star Trek will just kind of write something in and saying, this is what you have to just go with, as opposed to some other stuff that makes a little bit more sense. But it is reminiscent of a lot of old Star Trek that I am used to. So I just kind of rolled with it. The Adira thing, I was kind of with you there, Kyle, kind of wondering what's going on there. But the thing that I do like is I like the evolution of Stamets. And that I think that because of Adira, I don't know the proper way to say it, but he's less of an asshole now than he used to be because of Adira. And I think that he kind of likes to mentor her, and he sees something in her that is a little bit of him as well, of maybe not either not being accepted or being, looked on as someone different by other people. But he's kind of take on this mentor role with her, and I like how he's not what he used to be, and he's done his own little evolution, and I like that, and I think that he's maturing in that way as well, and because he seems to be less like jumping in with the jabs and right back at you. He's kind of taking a moment to pause. You see his character breathe for a second, and I noticed that type of thing. And so maybe it's kind of, they're trying to work on those two characters and seeing what happens with them. That was kind of where I was getting out of that scene. So yeah.
You mentioned that, and as you were talking, I was like, exactly. First season Stamets, how mean was he to Tilly and to Michael? What are you doing standing there? It's not like we have assigned seats and
very
go do your work. And this is my work. And how dare you butt into what I'm doing? You're absolutely right. And I think first season Stamets would have, what kind of mistake is that? Any fool could see you need to reinitiate after the blah, 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 blah. But you're right. He is growing. And I think the relationship with Tilly, in addition to Adira, has softened him.
Agreed.
I am torn at this act because there's so many interesting little bits. Like, we are still worried about the dilithium. And here we have a Kelpian who was looking for dilithium, and there's a dilithium shortage. That's what we've been focused on previously. And all of a sudden, now I'm really interested in this mirror universe in Giorgio. And I'm like, wait a minute, that was the original part of the story coming in, the dilithium and book and everything. So
also the original story of the Terran universe. You know, so it's all kind of coming full circle.
I know.
It wasn't like a one-shot gimmick thing. But I'll get into that in the beginning when I first started watching this, though. Because you, just real quick, you teased about a theory. And I want to make sure that we get to that.
We will. So I'm very interested with the Kelpian and them finding maybe some dilithium. I still want the burn answered, and I'm a little hesitant that they're not going to answer it this season now that it's taken off to the Terran universe. I also loved seeing Carl because I was a big CSI fan, and he was brass on CSI. So fabulous to see him. He did great. And I love that you said tautologies and puns and responses, because a tautology is a mathematical statement that every outcome is a truth. It's in logic. And anyway, so that really got me excited.
Tautology?
Tautology.
That's a new one for me. Wow. Tautology.
So, when a statement, every outcome is a truth, that it's a true statement. So anyways, your little math logic lesson. I loved also seeing, I don't know if it was this act or the opening, but when Book goes and talks to Saru and says that he has information and that he can be useful and that he wants to stay on the ship, I thought that was really brilliant. And again, Saru, he's very cautious, and we know this from season 1, but I feel like he's going to give Book a chance. Your time will come. I wanted to help when I came. I wanted to go and use the spore drive. This is what was going through my mind. But I was patient, and now we are being of service. And I think he's using that to help Book also fit in to all the rules and regulations. Kyle?
Speaking of that scene, when we had the scene where you see Saru say, don't report anything to Vance yet, did it start going through your head that he was going to go to Book to ask Book to go check this out?
That's very interesting when you said that, because I was thinking, if he leaves to go to the Kiev, that would be wrong. He does need to inform Admiral Vance, but he could send Book. I mean, that's the get out of jail card, if you will.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm finding interesting too is with this whole thing with Carl and the mental games it's playing, because that's one thing I think Discovery has really done for the mirror universe that hasn't been done before. It's more than just, it's this alternate dimension where everything is different. There's more to it than that. And I like what Discovery has done, even going back to the original first season when we were dealing with this, some of the things here. And Amy, I know you have some theories you want to discuss. I want to just throw out a couple of possible theories about who Carl is based off a couple things I saw. 2 speculations that really stood out to me. First, could Carl be part of the Q continuum? We haven't seen him in basically a very long time, and it would be interesting to go there. But this was another one that I found interesting. Carl is the guardian of forever. And this goes back to the original series, City on the Edge of Forever. And this actually feels like it fits more than even a Q continuum thing.
I like that better, because I think Q is too easy to go to because they're so powerful. I like that. That's cool. I would.
That's what I was thinking with the doorway, and I was actually thinking of that Guardian of Forever too.
So, but I know you have a couple theories, Amy. So I'd like to give you a chance to expand on those if you would like.
I'm going to wait till later when it gets more. So, yes, I do have a theory about Giorgio and Mirror Universe and yeah.
Well, since we are going to talk more, Amy, would you be so kind to read Act 2 for us?
Sure. Still confused, Giorgio hides the bioscanner bracelet, which she is still wearing, and now displays a healthy green light. That's good. Tilly welcomes her aboard. I think it should be Killy. Killy welcomes her aboard and notes the ship is about to break Terra's orbit for their journey. Giorgio tells Killy to provide a status report, and she describes discontent in the outer sectors and insurrection in slave systems. Giorgio realizes Killy is describing the first uprising. Discovery, meanwhile, will travel to the Imperial shipyard on Epsilon Indy 4 for the christening of the ISS Charon. Giorgio's palace vessel powered by a supermycelial reactor. Giorgio recalls this is the day that Lorca betrayed her in a coup. Killy insists she knows of the plot but has nothing to do with it. Killy says she planned to reveal the plot to Giorgio in private, but the Emperor tells her that the honor guard can be trusted. Killy explains Lorca wants Giorgio dead and that the Terran Burnham has also betrayed Giorgio. Killy notes Imperial law mandates execution for such treason. However, Giorgio says she will kill Lorca and bring Burnham back into the fold, changing the path of history. Killy acquiesces, but warns Giorgio's loyalists will not show her mercy should those details become known. Giorgio orders her to make sure that that does not happen and says it is not too late for Burnham to make a different choice. Giorgio arrives at a raucous party where Bryce uses a knife to knock a vegetable from atop Nilsson's head. The crew, including Reese, Kayla Detmer, Stamets, Culber, Irium, and Landry, drink and party as Kelpian servants, including Saru, work the room. Killy announces Giorgio using her lengthy name and title. Burnham then arrives, greeting Giorgio as mother.
I miss the Mirror Universe.
Landry, I was so freaking excited when I saw her. Rekha Sharma's back. I miss her.
I do too.
Lots of cool stuff here, guys. The Mirror Universe, at least the Discovery version of it, it's just so much fun.
Yeah, that party was very interesting. They had those where they were like holding electrical charges to see how long they could hold that. Did you ever play that game? My grandfather had it, and it was this old, I don't even know, and it would crank.
I remember the one you're talking about.
And we would all stand, me and my cousins, we would stand in a circle, and my grandfather would be cranking it, and we would see who was the first one to let go.
There was a stand-up arcade game that did that. Yeah. It was basically you put a quarter in to try to hold on to it and be electrocuted.
I know. We're the Mirror Universe guys.
Yeah, it might very well be. I guess for me, guys, one of the things that I really enjoy about the Mirror Universe is just seeing the actors just be able to just turn it up to 11. But it works so well here, especially with this Discovery crew, because you can tell they're trying hard not to laugh and smile while they're playing these roles because they're just having so much fun doing it, especially Mary Weissman as Killy. I mean, how hard, Kevin, do you think it is for her to stay in character?
Killy / Tilly's a fan favorite, and the only thing, one of the things I'm disappointed with COVID is not being able to see people dress up as these characters at conventions, but that's one of the things that's fun about the Terran Empire is visually it is stunning, and this Star Trek Discovery crew of costumes and set designers have really gone out of their way and earned their paychecks. I mean, geez, it is just fascinating. And you're looking like at all the little things, the difference in the daggers and the stuff that they're carrying and the guns, and and I can only imagine how much fun it is to play a different side of your character. I mean, it's easy to just automatically go evil, but I was looking at facial ticks and smiles and glances because And I think they did a great job of directing everyone going, just pretend you're having fun and that you're ready to kill someone any second.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this act because I had no idea we were coming back to the mirror universe. I mean, that was so season 1. But this act specifically, where Giorgio is trying to remember, oh, this is the first uprising. Oh, Lorca's gonna, rise up a coup and overtake
the ISS chair, and that's the one where he was killed in, right?
Yeah,
he fell
that
in
big,
Yes, okay.
I felt that this act was so important because as she was remembering, it was bringing back all of season 1. And so it was very, very important to sort of get that placement of where she was at that time. So I loved it. I loved her faking it till I make it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what was good, though, about that scene, and you could tell how good an actor she is that you can tell that there's a trace of the Star Trek Discovery influence on her, and that is a tough of a shield that she puts up in front of her when she's talking down to people, that when she walks into this situation here, she kind of sees her past in a different light, and it's showing so well on her face.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've developed a theory as we've been talking too, and I'll bring that up in a few minutes. But Kevin, would you be so kind to do Act 3 for us?
Of course, sir. As she sits on the throne, Giorgio notes it has been 6 months since they saw one another. Burnham describes a recent mission to Kepler 174d, where she visited a family of artists Giorgio mentioned from her own prior scouting mission there. The paintings and sculptures were sublime, Giorgio says. Burnham agrees and reveals she blinded the artist and removed their hands so that their remaining artwork would appreciate and value more quickly. Giorgio, struggling to hide how disturbed she is, says she forgot how thorough Burnham could be. Giorgio tells Burnham that she can share her cares with her, but Burnham responds only that she is happy when Giorgio's happy. Suddenly, a Kelpian servant spills cur sauce on Landry's boots, disturbing the gathering. She threatens him, prompting his ganglia to appear and her to order him sent to the butcher to make soup. Saru approaches and tells the Kelpian his pain will soon be over and that the madness will not take him. Burnham, disgusted, remarks that all Kelpians should be killed. Giorgio reveals that she knows of Lorca's plot, as Burnham feigns no knowledge of it, though she admits they slept together several times. Saru approaches Burnham with a glass of wine, which she knocks from his hand in rage. Burnham orders him also sent to the butcher so his ganglia can be sweetened for dessert, but Giorgio intercedes and claims him as her personal servant. In her dressing room, Saru thanks Giorgio and says that he will learn to serve her. She reveals she recognizes the other slave's illness as the Vahari. Am I saying that right?
Vahari. Yeah.
Vahari. Knowledge that surprises Saru. Giorgio notes that Saru has access to intelligence shared among slaves and asked about Burnham's intentions. He initially resists, but eventually tells her that Lorca and Burnham fear Giorgio has changed and become weak. Burnham cannot love someone who is weak, as that would lead to the death among Terrans, Saru says. Giorgio orders him to be her spy. Donning an imperial robe and spiky headdress, Giorgio vows to show Michael more than enough strength. In the corridor, Giorgio comes upon Burnham and others watching Reese battle Awoshikan over the position of security chief on the Sharon. The duo wager over the fight, with Giorgio betting on Awoshikan because she is loyal to the throne, where Reese is only interested in the prestigious title. Quote, loyalty always wins if the focus of that loyalty is strong and worthy, Giorgio says. And feared, Burnham adds. In the shuttle bay, Giorgio and the crew watch a dramatic performance accompanied by a narration from Stamets describing how Giorgio rose from being a peasant girl to fight off Klingons and become emperor. The curtain drops to reveal the Sharon in space nearby. Giorgio rises to address the audience, speaking of strength and enemies attacking from without and within. She suddenly turns and stabs Stamets, who had sidled up to her with a dagger. She resumes speaking, warning of a plot against the Empire. Giorgio resumes her seat on the throne as Burnham stews. Burnham stands and salutes Giorgio, prompting the rest of the crew to do as well. Burnham leaves quietly.
So many things right here. First of all, Kevin, I want to see if you agree with me. Giorgio's Empress outfit was something right out of Flash Gordon.
Oh, totally. That headdress, yeah, definitely.
Also, it's so nice to see Circus du Soleil survived all these
Cirque du
centuries.
Soleil, yeah, with the ribbon dancing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. But let's give it to Stamets for doing that cool, like, what do you call it? A ringmaster type of poem, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I actually saw the Cirque du Soleil actors. I'm like, well, they needed a job somewhere because they've closed all the Cirque shows. So I'm glad they found a home in Star Trek.
Now, Amy, one of the things that really stood out to me, though, was I think this more than anything else showed the change that Giorgio has gone through since being on the Discovery crew with how she treated the Mirror Universe Saru. And I do want to say that this episode of Union Federation, we're going back to the days of Discoville, it is being brought to you by Kelpie and Helper.
Yes. Oh. It definitely, this is the act where, yes, Giorgio is different. The Prime Universe has changed her. She's seen that you still can have power and show compassion, that you can support others, and that you can still accomplish your goal. And I think that her goal has changed. And so, but her facing Mirror Burnham, she's hitting a brick wall. And that frustration, and she's trying to get Mirror Burnham to change her actions, to change her thoughts. But it's only been a few hours, a few days, who knows how long. So it's super interesting. And I love that she's like trusting Owashikan, her honor guard, and says, yeah, you can speak in front of them. So she's already got that trust there. She's trusting Saru. You're going to be my eyes and ears. You're going to be my spy. And for some reason, this Saru, the slave Saru, is going to do what she says. I'm hoping that he feels that she might be different. Obviously she saved him from being stew. I love when Michael, or the Mirror Michael, says, why did you bring me from that rubbish pile? I was queen. I was master of my domain. I was the ruler there. And now I'm your servant. I'm only as good as you are. And I thought that was so powerful. And the look and the snarl that Sonequa had on her lip, like, it scared me. And I thought Sonequa Martin Green was amazing in episode 1 with all her range of emotions. No, we're getting completely different. Sonequa Martin Green is killing it with Mirror Michael. And I'm loving to see it. And it's like, she's scaring me, you guys. She's scaring me.
Sonequa Martin Green currently channeling some of her Walking Dead rage from when she was on that show. And Kevin, I just got to say, she does work the purple lipstick quite well.
Yes, she does.
Yes.
I got to tell you, though, I'm not a fan of that Burnham haircut. I don't know what that is. I'm not a fan of it. I was kind of cringing that it was back. But My favorite scene is, and I'm going to kind of touch on what you said, Amy, about how she is just killing it with the acting here, because when you're in a position like Emperor Giorgio and you try to keep that power, not only do you have to not trust everyone, but you have to read expressions and body language to kind of catch a clue. And I love the scene where you see Stamets starting to make his move and set her up. And I want to say that I was predicting that Giorgio was going to kill him, and it did. But what kind of surprised me, and it was great, was the look on Burnham realizing that this plan is not going the way that she wanted. And the way that Sonequa was able to show that little bit of like, crap, but like almost tip her hand while doing that. And to save face after Giorgio does her little like, I'm still the Emperor's, don't mess with me type of thing, and we're going to, be strong, that Burnham then stands up and goes, all hail, the Empress speech that she did. But it was a little too late, because I think that Burnham was trying to fool her, saying, I don't know. Okay, so was she trying to fool her saying, no, I did not know that? Or was she trying to say, okay, yes, I messed up, I'm definitely still on your side? I don't know, but she was trying to save face, at least in front of any suspicious crew members, maybe, by saying, I'm going to back Burnham because, well, plan A went out the window.
Yeah, I don't know if Burnham can get out of this, because, like, Killy knew. And she had that conversation with Giorgio, and it's like, well, when was the last time you saw Lorca? Well, I slept with him, da-da-da. The fact that Giorgio is asking Burnham just told Burnham that Giorgio knows. That was that whole conversation. And so, yeah, when she saw Giorgio kill Stamets, and then it was like, oh, shit, this is...
I liked the visual of dead Stamets with the camera coming up over his body on the ground, and you see a pool of his blood, and then the scarves, the red scarves kind of around his corpse. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
No, it was quite powerful in how they portrayed it. And it's some of the great camera work that I've seen through Discovery throughout this entire season. One of the things, too, that I found very interesting, Kevin, I want to ask your opinion on this, and it's something with the Mirror Universe, is it has to be hard walking around knowing everybody's looking to stab you in the back. Like, even the people who say they're loyal to you have a fear of you, and maybe even to protect themselves, they're going to stab you in the back. And the way Michelle Yeoh handles Giorgio in this, especially in this particular act with everything going on, with such grace but confidence, even though she's kind of aware of the events going around her. And I think it sums it up when she kills Stamets, because one of the things, if you remember back to Discovery Season 1, Stamets was like, why is there no mirror universe of me here? And now we know why.
Right.
So I found that very interesting, and I wanted you get your take on how Michelle Yeoh carried herself in this.
Well, what's interesting is this is a textbook way of how a dictator will keep power for as long as they can. And that is, first of all, sniffing out something like this and having the right followers behind you to protect you long enough, because they want your power, willing to kill you for it, but they are choosing their moment. So you have to either make a public presentation of your power, whether it's killing someone in front of other people to create fear, but also knowing when to kill your underlings before they get a chance to kill you, so someone who is hungry enough to not quite take that chance can take their place, and then you keep the process going. And I thought that was a perfect representation of that in that scene. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense, actually. I agree with you. Amy, did you have any thoughts on that?
No.
I said it too. I just said it perfectly. So she's.
You did, yes.
Yeah. Amy's working on other theories. But I'm going to ask Amy if she will take us out with the final act.
Yes. In the corridor, Burnham is surrounded by Killy, Giorgio, Owashikan, and many guards. Giorgio reveals she knows Burnham is working with Lorca and had planned Stamets' attempted assassination. Owashikan disarms Burnham. Giorgio tells her to confess in exchange for sparing her life. Burnham is angered at Giorgio's perceived weakness. Giorgio says Burnham owes her, but Burnham retorts that she was master of the trash heap, but now was merely this reflection of Giorgio who can never stand on her own. Lorca loves and honors her, she says. Burnham confesses to the coup and says she would do it again, kneeling for her expected execution. Giorgio draws her sword and heaves it back to strike, but stops after only just cutting Burnham's neck slightly. She lowers her weapon, calling execution the easy way that will lead to one or both of their deaths. Having not executed her, Giorgio says their future is now unwritten and orders Burnham thrown into the agonizer, but not before Killy knocks her unconscious by savagely kicking her in the face.
Okay. I just want to mention something. I love the fact that instead of saying Tilly, you have been saying Killy in this, Amy. What's funny is when you watch this with the subtitles, it says Killy.
Oh, awesome.
Major props to Mary Weissman for great facial expression when she knocks Giorgio out at the end of this episode too. That was classic. It's a short close, but it's incredibly powerful. One of the things I really like, harken back to the beginning of the episode when you had Giorgio and Burnham training, and Burnham stops right at her neck, and then Giorgio's accusing her of being weak, yet here Giorgio is doing it here. However, I love how Giorgio plays it off by saying, no, death is too quick and too easy. Put her in the agonizer. Still showing strength and showing, I think, in a way, more cruelty than actually killing somebody.
Well, that's evidence that she's learned, because just earlier, right, at the first act, Burnham was talking to Giorgio and says, that's the easy way if you just die. Your challenge is out there on that planet that ends with a 4.
Darius 5.
Yes. Oh, 5. And that's where your courage needs to be, right? And so she's learned that and is now using that against Mir Burnham. Kevin?
I want to touch on something you said in the last act that I forgot to mention, but it kind of ties into this a little bit. You had mentioned, Amy, that she's not getting through to Burnham, right? Mm-hmm. That she's hitting a wall here. And I was thinking, and I thought this is kind of cool because this is what we're kind of beginning to see, and I like where Giorgio is looking at Mirror Burnham and seeing a reflection of herself. See what I did there? Mirror Burnham, reflection of herself, of maybe an earlier self, and because you're so wrapped up in getting power and taking a position and showing strength and not weakness, and you're being brutal about it, that she's seeing something in, regular Burnham that is having an effect on her, but still faking it till you make it, as you say.
I think one of the interesting things with that whole dynamic too, Kevin, now that you bring that up, is I think Giorgio is actually trying to turn her Burnham, the Mirror Universe Burnham, into some kind of amalgamation of that Burnham and the Burnham she's come to have affection for in the Prime Universe.
It almost reminds me of a little bit of when you see earlier in the episode when Giorgio's like punching the thing and then it tries to spar with Burnham. It kind of feels like Burnham is this calm but stern parent talking to an angsty teenager, and now the Burnham that we're getting in the in the Terran universe is the teenager growing up a little bit and learning and realizing all those lessons that were being burned into their brain. Burned, see what I said? Is now starting to make sense to her. Does that analogy work a little bit?
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Okay.
Amy, I know you have thoughts.
Okay.
Many thoughts.
Oh, I'm ready for this one because I got questions for you, Amy.
So this is my theory. Because
hold on.
Yes.
Hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt. Before you say your theory, I think I can set you up here.
Okay.
Because the reason why I think I can set you up is because when I went into this episode, not really realizing that they were going to hit the alternate universe thing, or I'm sorry, the Terran universe as hard as they did, it caught me off guard. My first reaction was, do I want to be back in this universe? Visually, it's great. Acting, it's fun. But why are we here? And I still have that question, especially the way they got there. I was with the Carl and the cigar guy, and it's nice talking with you guys because now I get different perspectives and I feel better about it. But then, when we were talking before we started recording, you're like, I got a theory. I'm like, okay, I'm going to set you up now, Amy. This is how I was feeling it and make me feel better now.
Okay. So I am very similar to you, Kevin, because I'm like, the whole time, like when Discovery went to the future, I'm like, what about this Section 31 show? So here's my thought. Philippa Giorgio is now in the mirror universe where she belongs. That is where Section 31 is going to start. And Section 31 is going to be her amalgamation, I love that vocabulary word, of bringing the Federation to the Terran. So it's the flip, right? Section 31 in our timeline is doing the dirty underhand deeds. Giorgio is going to create an underground do-good Section 31 in the mirror. Totally just my supposition. You can totally at me later, but I am going with that. What do you think?
It's interesting because I had something similar, but not quite to what you were going with, Amy. My thinking was with Section 31, and after hearing about the molecules and everything like that, is that what's going to happen is Giorgio is not going to be able to go back to where Discovery is currently in the future, but they can send her back to the same time in the regular universe where she goes to work for Section 31 in the Prime universe.
Okay.
But your idea, I hadn't really put in the idea that she would stay in the Terran universe because I'm just thinking Section 31 in the Prime universe because I wasn't expecting the Terran universe to be popping back up either. So I think it could go either way at this point. Kevin's kind of looking at both of us going,
Parts of my brain are exploding here. I love this, Amy. Okay, so as you were describing your theory here, I was rolling with you on it, and I still am, because I was starting to think like, okay, what would make a really good Section 31, or Kyle, help me out real quick. The character that Neil Patrick Harris played in Starship Troopers, the intelligent secret.
Oh yeah, I can't think of his name.
I forget what group, but these guys have a certain power, and who else? What type of character would really be great at leading an early version of Section 31 where not only are you from a different parallel universe and then travel to the main time, but yet then you've gone almost 1,000 years into the future and you've gained all of this knowledge, defines the term knowledge is power. And so, yeah, I can't do better than that. So, Amy, I'm going to give you this little slow clap thing. I like that. I'm going to go with it. Well done. Well done. I am now satisfied.
But that would be a good reason why she's back there and why we would be interested, right?
Yeah, so the only question is how to get her back. And, of course, this is Star Trek. They'll answer that.
Well, I don't think she's coming back. Like I said, I think Section 31 could be in...
What I mean is going back to the origins, back to the timeline of originally where she was in the regular universe.
Yeah, so we'd be back in the 22nd century.
The Captain Pikey season 1-2 time,
but
thing.
A different universe. Yeah.
And Amy, part of the reason why I'm leaning that way is because there's supposed to be another character from Discovery who we haven't seen in this season and only saw briefly in season 2 that was supposed to be part of that Section 31 show.
So, yeah, that's true.
Who?
But if she goes back, Shazad Latif?
Yeah, Latif.
Folk.
Gotcha.
Or whatever his name is, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But if she goes back, then that doesn't answer her molecules being in a different universe. So that's why I'm thinking she needs to stay there.
Yeah. Well, what I'm thinking, though, is, and again, just speculation here, from what Kovich said, maybe going to the mirror universe kind of reset her, like we were talking about earlier with the 7-year reset and everything like that. And it allows her to jump to the within the same time frame, but not to the future. So she can survive. She can survive going across a dimensional plane, but she can't survive.
But we don't know
doing the
how
dimensional
long
plane
she
and
can
time
survive.
travel.
That's the concern I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but that could even be storyline for that Section 31 show too.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
Or we can go deep dive into that Next Gen episode with Matt Fuhrer, and he has that time traveling ship from the future.
That's right.
I think all of a sudden we've gotten a lot of people really interested in what they could possibly do with the Section 31 show.
I agree.
and then you got the Daniels guy from Enterprise. So we'll see what happens. I like it though. Good job, Amy. Yeah, that was cool. I like that.
Let's hit up a little episode trivia because there was a couple interesting things here. Kovich mentions an alternate reality created by a temporal incursion by a Romulan mining ship, referencing the events of Star Trek 2009. This is also the first Star Trek episode to mention or include any characters from the alternate reality. Did you guys catch that?
Yes.
No.
I paused it and I was like, I told my brother, I'm like, did you hear that? The Romulan ship? Remember when he came back and and Spock and Vulcan and he's like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I caught that. I loved it.
I had the dumb. I didn't catch that. Only watched it once.
I watched it 3 times, so.
Did you catch it on your first try?
No, but the second one, yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm the only one who caught it on the first watch? Okay. Well then, the other thing that was interesting, and I did also catch this, Lieutenant Commander Stamets mentions the prefix code to get a backdoor into the other Federation ship sensor array. This is a reference to Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, where Kirk and the crew of the Enterprise used the prefix code as a backdoor to take over the Reliance shield system.
Wow. I missed that completely.
And if it's not THX 1138, I'm not going to get little stuff like that. Come on.
So this...
Apparently I'm not... I'm done.
This really leads me to why I am loving this season. It's tying in everything. All universes, right? Now we're getting the Kelvin timeline. We're getting references to TNG and Enterprise and season 1 Discovery and season 2 Discovery. And
Kyle, does this remind you of a current Star Wars television production that's doing the same darn thing and uniting fans?
Yes. I mean, it's so great. And like this episode really, I loved the Burnham and Giorgio parallels. Like you mentioned, Kyle, like when at the beginning, Giorgio was punching the bags and grabs the knife and stops right at Burnham's, and Burnham didn't flinch. And then we see that at the end in the Terran universe, and she's going to say, and she cuts her neck. She deserved that. But like when they were walking in the snow planet, totally took me back, episode 1, when they're walking in the desert,
I did catch that. That. It was
And you've got this whole mirror and Prime, and this is mirror Giorgio with Prime, and then you have Prime Burnham with Prime Giorgio, and like all different combinations of these characters being intertwined and bringing it all together. I'm just really enjoying it. And this was another episode, just great.
Kevin, I'm going to just bring this up. Is Alex Kurtzman the Mirror Universe version of Jon Favreau?
That remains to be seen. He's because he he kind of fumbled it through the first couple of seasons. I'm just going to be honest. That's my personal opinion. But he's starting to bring it around, or the creative crew is starting to. I think there's just some learning curves there, and I think that they're kind of starting to get it where whether it's the throwbacks to other stuff to kind of tie the world and bring it closer together, but also to just do some better writing about character development.
I think the biggest thing, and this is just my personal opinion, being out of the time box they were in. Stuck in that very heavy in Star Trek lore time period. Getting out of that, having some freedom to spread their wings without having to worry about really messing with the canon and things like that. I think it really helps the writers be able to be a little bit more free with ideas they have.
I'm not satisfied with that. There was a lot of rich universe to still stay in there to do that. It's the format of the show that is saving it for me right now. And giving the other characters, secondary characters, now co-stars, more chance to shine. It has nothing to. I understand why they did that and they went into the future and blah blah blah, but I'm going to disagree with that. I think that the show is starting to find itself, figure out what's working by not making it so Burnham-esque, and that they're kind of bringing in more people into it and giving them more of a chance to shine. Star Trek's always been about the characters. You can put them in any scenario, any time frame, anything. If the characters don't work and they don't develop, then you don't have a good show. And that's what Star Trek's always been good at doing, especially when you got people supporting each other.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, with that, we're going to take a quick break, tell you what else is going on around the Fandom Podcast Network, and see what kind of maybe subspace signals we might be able to intercept for this week's episode. We'll be right back after this short break.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to the Fandom Podcast Network and all of the other awesome shows we have to offer. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, our weekly pop culture news podcast. Blood Kings, our Highlander podcast. Couch Potato Theater, our podcast celebrating our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite pop culture topics. Enzo, the NFL podcast. Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville podcast. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our Doctor Who podcast. Lethal Mullet, a 1980s and 90s action film podcast. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast. And our newest show, Making Treks, a new Star Trek podcast, the deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. You can enjoy all of these great Fandom Podcast Network shows on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. Fandom Podcast Network is also on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. You can also find us on Facebook under Fandom Podcast Network. You can also email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter under Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
Well, we hope you're enjoying everything the Fandom Podcast Network is putting out under its umbrella. We're always striving to make better podcasts to feed your ears around here and hopefully give you something to enjoy in these strange, strange times that we live in. But, guys, I put the sensor array out. You know, this universal COVID 2019, whatever it is, still kind of causing some interference in the signals, but I was able to pick up a few subspace signals. And what I was able to pick up, guys, is something I think we're all very intrigued by. And it involves maybe our favorite current Discovery guest star, and that is David Cronenberg. First of all, it has been confirmed that he will be returning to play Kovich in Season 4 of Discovery, which makes us all very happy, as he's become kind of this man of mystery on Discovery, in my opinion. There's so much more to him than meets the eye, but I love how they played it off. Kevin, I know you were talking about this earlier.
Yeah, before we get into his character, though, he reminded me of something that, uh, when it comes to Star Wars fans and also costuming and stuff like that, there was a thing that was done that was said for a while that there is no glasses in Star Wars. Okay. But then that kind of changed with a character in, I think, a comic book, and then more recently in The Mandalorian, Kyle, with the doctor that does the cloning thing. He had glasses on.
Yep.
And I'm trying to think back to other Star Trek, like characters and stuff like that. And Amy, I'm going to pick your brain a little bit. Characters, not counting Geordi with his, his corrective lenses. Regular crew guest stars that weren't like a time travel-y type thing that was set in current time, wearing glasses.
That's interesting. The first one that actually popped to my mind was, I think it's Star Trek 5, and Kirk is not happy. He's turning older glasses. And he has the glasses.
Right. They weren't they given as a gift by Bones, if I remember correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was, and he sells them in the past in Star Trek 4, right? Is that what he does to get money or something?
Yeah.
But
yeah, he sells them in 4. So that's a great thing. They're going to be given to me again.
But we don't get a character that wears them as part of the thing. And when I'm watching Cronenberg with those glasses, there's something about his delivery and those glasses that makes him even more creepier and formidable, because he's got a certain cadence to the way that he's speaking and making eye contact. It's almost like between an interrogator, an intelligence officer, and a really intense, creepy doctor. And I love it. I freaking love it. I want more of this guy. More acting for Cronenberg, less directing. Let's do that.
So I don't understand what his purpose is. I love the guy, and you're right. You've described it perfectly. His thin, slender frame with these big black glasses, it's great. But what is he? Does he work for Starfleet? Is he part of the Federation? What is his role? He's interrogating. He's a historian. What else does he do?
He's like engineer, biology expert. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what he's going to do in season 4.
But look how intrigued he was by the spear data, too.
He did not trust it.
Very intrigued by that. Yeah. So I think there's a lot more to him than meets the eye, and I think that's kind of the point here. But let's talk. David Cronenberg recently talked with Variety magazine. He had a couple interesting things to bring up. On Kovich himself, here's how the actor describes his character of Kovich and his relationship to Emperor Giorgio. He is an interrogator who's also kind of an academic historian. He plays his cards pretty close to his vest, as does the Emperor. And as he tries to pry open some secrets from her, she is actually doing the same to him. Cronenberg resolved the mystery of how he ended up with the role, which ends up to be rather routine. Alex Kurtzman was interested in him, and as he considers himself a fan of the original Star Trek, he was delighted to do it, but being a Toronto native made it convenient. But Cronenberg reveals he is still finding his way on the new show. I hadn't been following Discovery, and of course, in each case, it's quite a complex universe with a lot of characters, and in fact, more than one universe as it turns out. So I can't say I've untangled every possible knot in the show at all. I'm concentrating like a good actor mainly on my character and his particular role at the moment. Really, it's a be here now kind of thing because I still haven't figured everything out. So in other words, he's in the dark as much as everybody else is to his character. Right?
Sounds like it.
But Kevin, you'll be happy about this. Kovich will be back. As a filmmaking veteran, Cronenberg finds the Toronto production very impressive, but he doesn't see helming an episode himself, describing it as a very different kind of directing. As a film director, he's involved in every element of post-production, for example, but Discovery has a showrunner who oversees those elements and an experienced team in place. However, Variety reports that as an actor, he will be back in season 3 and return in season 4, which is currently in production.
I found more of that extended interview on TrekCore.com, and he says that he spoke a little about his casting in the series, which he joked was due because of his Toronto residency, which is where the series is being filmed. He says, "I'm cheap and I'm available. I live in Toronto and it's being shot in Toronto, and I think that's my main qualification." But I just got a note through people that I know, that casting people, saying that executive producer Alex Kurtzman was really thinking of having me do a spot on the show. And I said, of course, I'd be absolutely delighted. Who wouldn't be, especially as an original Star Trek fan, and for Canadians too. This is what people forget sometimes. I mean, because William Shatner was one of the lead actors in the original show, and he was a very well-known Canadian actor. To have him be in a successful U.S. TV series was quite thrilling. So it's kind of come full circle that Star Trek should be shooting in Toronto, and of course, I was delighted to be part of the multiple universe of Star Trek. I love his look. If you look at his history of films, I can only imagine what it was like to be, because he kind of tends to do kind of a horror slash dark drama, diving into people's deepest fears and stuff like that. And so I'd seen like Dead Ringers and a bunch of other stuff that he's done, and I wasn't really a big fan of his stuff until he did A History of Violence with Viggo Mortensen and Ed Harris, and it was a great character development about someone who's trying to hide from their past, from the mob, and live in a small town with a family until something happens and he brings attention to himself, and the people come after him. And it's a great character development one, but it didn't really feel Cronenberg, except for when you have those moments of extreme violence and how graphic he is known for doing that. But seeing him bring his own face, his own tense kind of character to this, I think is great and is a perfect fit, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, no, I think he brings a very interesting and intrigue to the show. Amy and Kevin, I have not had a chance to watch The Ready Room this week. It is the holidays, a lot going on.
I missed
Hit me up
too.
with some stuff that came from The Ready Room.
Really?
Kevin!
Am I the only one that saw The Ready Room?
Yes,
really?
you are.
We've got a flip-flop this week.
Yeah, I missed
Any highlights from The Ready Room we should know about?
Yeah, it's great because, if you don't obviously catch it on CBS All Access, you can find it on the CBS All Access YouTube as well. So you can check that out. Basically, it was it was really cool because you get Will Wheaton, who's awesome, by the way. And he had basically all of the other characters that are part of the bridge crew that aren't the all the actors that we just spoke of, and their experiences in doing this awesome alternate reality slash Terran universe, and their experiences. It was like Emily Kutza, all of them talking about. Being able to step out of their normal characters in these cool costumes, and just going through that whole gambit there. And so you had Awasa Khan talking about, was it Owen Adagio, how you say her name? Reese, Patrick Quaccoon, and Sarah Mitch, who played Nilsson, but also played, I'm sorry, what's the robot character she played that died?
Irium.
Yes. And so them all talking about it was great. But the best moment, and this is why you should watch it, is when she's being questioned, Sarah Mitch, who's now playing Lieutenant Nilsson and not having to put on as much makeup as the Arium character, is how they've kind of become this family, and joking around behind camera. But she says one of the most funniest moments was from season 1, where they were cracking each other up between takes, and she's his Arium, and Arium's lips pop off. And then you see everyone, because everyone's like, because of COVID, everyone's in their own area being interviewed at home and stuff. And you see all of them at the same time, like put their hands up to their lips and start laughing hilariously. Will Wheaton commenting on that, and how they were just how that was such a funny movie, especially Bryce, who played Ronnie Rowe. He started laughing so hard he was crying. It was a very wonderful moment. And then of course they showed the scene, a teaser scene from the next episode. But just for those moments alone, and seeing these characters, as I've been going on about all this time, being highlighted, and it's wonderful seeing them all kind of bounce off each other, even though they're not in the same room, was good to see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that's one of the things I do love about Discovery is on the outside when we're just seeing this cast. I mean, so the Star Trek casts have notoriously always been, I shouldn't say notoriously, but have always been known for being close. But there's just something about the Discovery cast where it just feels like they are such a tight-knit group. I mean, and we know Next Gen crew is tight, we know, but there's just something very special about the relationship the Discovery cast has that just seems to be there because they've been all on board with this from the get-go. And I think because they were kind of the first Star Trek show in a good while, it just feels like they have this special bond. Kevin?
I'm sorry, I forgot one other cool thing that they mentioned in this interview that I thought was great. Will said, because they're talking about the fight scene between Reese and Owasakan, where they're fighting. Okay, and they brought that up and said, "What was it like?" He said, "What was it like? Did you work with the stunt coordinator?" Blah blah blah. And it was Patrick Quachun, who plays Reese, said, "Actually, we have," and I forget the writer's name. It was a female's name. I forgot what he said. "We have her to thank." Because we did a Star Trek convention, which was that first one I think they did in Las Vegas together. And there was a question that came up, and they asked, and they said, "Oh, it's great. We just wish that we could do some more fighting." The writer was in the audience when that happened, and she took a mental note of it and then wrote that scene for them so they could do that.
Wow.
And they both thanked that writer for that, and they thought that was really cool.
Very cool. Well, with that, guys, it's time to put the Union Fed back into space dock. Hopefully, we're going to have some Orville news soon, as we know season 3 is underway again in production. So
should we send some spies over to the set, and kind of figure some stuff out? Amy, you want to crash?
Yeah. We need to get on there.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's look at
that. I do have one request for part 2 of Terra Firma. I want Mirror Universe Jet.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. I miss Jet Reno.
Oh my gosh. Oh gosh, Kyle, that would be so cool. Man, Mirror Universe Jet, where would she go with that? Gosh.
I don't know. Maybe we might already have Mirror Universe Jet for all we know with the way she carries herself. On that note, first and foremost, Hayley, get well soon. We miss you. And of course, to the amazing crew of the Union Federation, thanks so much for once again going on the journey with me this week as we just talk all things Discovery and the Orville here on the Union Federation podcast. We will be back next week to cover Terra Firma Part 2. Until then, hailing frequencies are now closed.